With that, let us dive into our first session for today. This is called Embracing the Future International FinTech Institute, the IFI, GIFT City, Gandhinagar. Architecting a strong and competent FinTech talent pipeline. So, this is going to be a presentation. May I please invite our speaker on stage, Mr. Sandeep Dixit, IFI, GIFT City. Can we welcome him with a thunderous round of applause, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Sakshi. And in fact, at the outset, I must thank you all for the meticulous arrangements and organization which you have taken through us. Good morning, everybody. Welcome you to this session on architecting the fintech talent pipeline, which is extremely essential for the emerging scenarios in the fintech space. I am Sandeep Dixit, as she has mentioned, and Director of International FinTech Institute, that is at GIFT City, Gandhinagar. I will just take you through the initial flow of this event for the next 15-20 minutes and then the next two sessions. Please switch the next slide. What you see here is the GIFT International Financial Centers Technology City, which is in Gandhinagar, and that is the actual ecosystem within which IFI is embedded. Next, please. The topic, as already announced. Next. So here's the flow. So for the next 15-20 minutes, I'll be just briefing you on what IFI is, how it is relevant to the international fintech various initiatives and research. And then we'll move on to the panel number 1, which will introduce you to various emerging technologies in the fintech space. And the next panel will be on the climate fintech, which is again, as you will understand, is extremely relevant in the today's fast-growing GDP and associated carbon emissions and all. So these are the three main discussions, and of course question and answers. You can have questions immediately after each session, or overall we can have no issues. Next slide, please. What you see here is I call it the Hello World moment of International FinTech Institute on the 17th of January. And this was inaugurated by the Chief Minister of Gujarat. And also seen here are the Vice Chancellor of Ahmedabad University, Professor Pankaj Chandra, Vice Director of Indian Institute of Technology, Professor Rajat Mona, and other dignitaries from this Managing Director of GIFT City, that is Mr. Tapan, and other governing council members. So this is what was the foundation. IIT Gandhinagar and Ahmedabad University got together to found this institute as a Section 8 company and then take these initiatives in programs and research, etc. As we will explain next. Please, next slide. This gives you a very clear picture of what International FinTech Institute is. As you can see, it is, again, the core of this is three members are there, three global premier members are there, that is University of California, San Diego, IIT Gandhinagar, and Ahmedabad University. They got together, and this mandate was given by the GIFT City. So actually it is initiated by GIFT City and then handed over to this consortium to take this forward. Briefly, a context on this, why we needed this FinTech Institute. The GIFT City is, as you know, is like onshoring of all those entities, startups, and various companies from India who were compelled to go abroad and offshore their activities because of certain benefits, the taxation and ease of doing business, etc. It was realized that this type of brain drain has to be prevented, and therefore the GIFT City management and the government of India decided that let's create an ecosystem which is extremely conducive, friendly to the investors, and a single window clearance type of thing is there. So when deliberating on this, the various think tanks members, they found that one of the most critical link in this will be the talent pipeline, as you all will appreciate. And that is why the concept of International FinTech Institute was born. So to run this and take it forward with the complete profoundness in its thought, etc., the management of GIFT City thought that let us hand it over to global premium institutes, that is why UCSD came in, and IIT Gandhinagar and Ahmedabad University. So based on these deliberations, this institute was founded with this, what you see on the various dimensions of this, the creativity, the innovation, research, performance consulting, and training and capacity building programs, all setting up proper research labs, etc. So this is how International FinTech Institute came into being. From 17 January, we are now about 9 months, and already intensity of activities kept picking the pace. Next. These are the three members, as I mentioned, and Professor Chandra, Professor Rajat Muna, and Professor Pradeep Khosla is a world-renowned person in this space of tech and education sector. He is Chancellor of University of California, San Diego. So very kindly he agreed to support this venture and provide all types of technical expertise in terms of research and capacity building, for which UCSD is very well known. So we are thankful to UCSD for getting associated with this venture. Next. These are the team members, faculty members drawn from the best, and they are contributing to this various training program, lecture sessions, building a research center here in IFI, and even going forward to co-develop and co-design with the industry. So a good mix of industry and academics at the center. Next. So how do we architect this talent pipeline in the emerging complex scenarios, which is often summed up as VUCA, you might be knowing, VUCA, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in the emerging world. How to steer through that. So you need to be, particularly the upcoming, this new generation that needs to be equipped with the most relevant and powerful skills so that they can, in their career over the long term, steer and be successfully placed in this. So that's the architecting part of IFI as per the mandate given by GIFT City. Next. All of you probably now very well understand that what fintech is and what it is at the intersection of these three key domains or sectors, you can say. The technology, which is on the right side is mentioned, various tech suite is there, and climate, which is again most critical part, and one of the panel discussion, that is why it has been dedicated to this. And finance, of course, because it is financial technologies. And regarding definition, there are various versions. Some people call it fintech as a concept, an umbrella term for housing this finance and various technology parts, and some, like this Financial Stability Board, they define this as a concept which is enabling new type of products, services, and a lot of innovation in this sector, that is why I put this definition particularly, because it is very, very relevant to the Indian context also. The biggest challenge in our Indian context is the inclusion. As you all know, the 145 crores people, and access to the financial services, which is directly impacting their livelihoods and all, those needs to be addressed. And that is why innovation here becomes the anchor point in this initiative. Technology side, I won't go. You are more familiar than me, in fact, in terms of what AI, IoT, cloud and all, because right from the 12th standard, now that this generation starts working on this tech. And finance side, these are the innovative concepts emerging. What you see here is like banking and payment. The whole concept of a physical building and infrastructure, huge complexes, etc., getting shrunk because of this digital tech in the finance. And no wonder in future we will have a very small core physical infrastructure with the chairperson of the bank and all, and rest of the bank will be dispersed through the cloud as a virtual entity, and much more effective and much more efficient, and providing a much better customer experience than the physically people, the bankmen do. So this is extremely important. And one more critical point in this, I must point out, is the RegTech, which you notice there, the regulatory part of this. See, as this pace is picking up, there is a hurry in terms of taking this banking services, insurance, etc., to the last mile in the remote rural area, to an individual whose earnings are meager. So this space has to be there. At the same time, the challenge is you have to prevent the scams, frauds. Otherwise, once this fraud intensity picks up, the people will lose trust. So that is why regulatory intervention is extremely, extremely critical to balance and like adjust this trade-off between pace and the ensuing risks and the cyber crime, etc. So this is what is the big challenge today also, which the regulatory bodies are facing, and that is why I'll show in the next slides how IFI is able to facilitate in this sector by venturing into these concepts like sandboxes and all. Next, please. So how we envision to make an impact in this sector? How do we architect this whole concept to create this talent pipeline? This is a conceptualization of the 4 foundational pillars at IFI. As you see, first, of course, is the intense study of the market. Whoever is the stakeholder in this space of whether it is the supply side or the consumer side or the regulator side, everyone's needs have to be factored in whenever we design and develop any project or programs. So this is the most important, wherein extensive literature survey with the help of the highly competent professors from IIT, UCSD, Ahmedabad University. As you know, they are excellent in desk research, so they have a lot of access to resources, the right resources for these type of research publication. From there, we are skimming this data to see how it can be converted to a product and lead to market side placement. Next part is the program design. This is what is the crux of the talent pipeline. How do we design the programs? In the next slide, I will take you through how this whole flow diagram is. But essentially, when we talk of program design, we talk of learner-centric. The learner centricity today, particularly the youngsters who are there, they would, of course, connect it very well. It is the learning content, the module, the lessons have to be available wherever you are, whenever you want. The whole concept of calling you to an institute class for every little thing is now gone. So our institute, IFI, has conceptualized a very innovative model that is called the 5-axis learning model, which next slide I'll show you. It trades off, it adjusts all the users, the learner side aspects into the context, into the learning module. How the module is to be delivered, those parts are addressed in this. And design thinking being the crux of the whole program design aspects. So that is where the learner context is captured into this. Third part is the ecosystem building, which is extremely important because this is here where collaboration, partnerships, and associations with the various industry, the fintech product companies, the banks, the bankers, the insurance companies, the legal entities, whoever is there in this space relevant to this, he has to connect, IFI has to connect with them and then co-design and brainstorm and develop these programs. Otherwise, the impact will be less than optimal. So that is where we are creating a very strong ecosystem. We are already having partnerships with various universities and IITs and taking this forward in terms of collaborative projects. And of course, in this ecosystem, we also are organizing hackathons, which are now hackathons, as you know, have become a very powerful tool for learning transfer and actually a lot of exchange of ideas. So these things are taken care of through this ecosystem building. Last one is the research and innovation. Again, extremely critical link in this. And that is why the first part of this whole topic, which you read, embracing the future. How do you embrace the future? You embrace the future by getting ready for that. To get ready for that, you should know what is coming in the future. To know what is coming in the future, you need to do a lot of research in the research publications, the top journals, which direction AI is going, which direction machine learning is going, what new algorithms are coming, what is happening in the blockchain side. Every aspect, the cloud computing, you must know in order to be able to do a research and produce a good, relevant, meaningful product out of this. We are taking care of this very well through the research fraternity from IIT, UCSD, and Ahmedabad University. We have a very strong pool of researchers with PhDs and postdocs who are on board in this and helping IFI in develop these type of innovative solutions to problems. Another term I mentioned in this was the performance consulting side. See, we design programs based on the problems which the industry is facing. In a way, our training programs are not the traditional lecture sessions. They are actually uh, when we address a classroom of maybe some CXOs, sometimes CXOs may be there, sometimes middle level, sometimes youngsters may be there. When we address the class, we are addressing their problems areas, not just a routine lecture. What is fintech and all that? That's given. That has to be there at the foundation. But ultimately, at the end of the day, out of the class, the learner or the participant wants to know whether his problem was solved or not. So that is the whole crux of performance consulting. I don't call it training programs. They are performance consulting programs. These programs, you spent 2 hours in a classroom, you should get very satisfied in terms of solution to the problem which you are facing. That is the another aspect of this. So these four foundational pillars are the key to architecting this future, so that we are able to seamlessly and welcome it and embrace it rather than be threatened and be risked by that. Next, please. And another significant aspect of IFI, that is the uniqueness by virtue of its co-location. See, IFI, as I said, is embedded in that GIFT ecosystem. And how it helps IFI, as you see on this left side, all these entities, the banks, the DPs, they are having their offices in GIFT City. So IFI, when it interacts with them, it gets to know. I mean, we are now also very soon will be organizing a number of roundtable sessions and brainstorming sessions with the leaders from here. And we will be interacting with almost every dimension of fintech. Whoever is the stakeholder, the complete stakeholder grid which we have made is actually populated with each one of them. What is their domain in fintech, how they are, what are their activities, what problems they are facing, and how IFI can help their middle level, senior level, entry level professionals, so that the induction in their organization is seamless, and right from very early couple of months, they get the desired results from the participants. So this is the real unique position of IFI in terms of other universities and educational institutes offering these courses. Another thing in the passing I'll mention, see, to the best of our knowledge, globally you'll find a lot of programs and courses, short-term programs from Wharton or other Harvard and all, who are offering programs online for fintech related courses. But I haven't found a single institute in the world as institutionalizing the fintech concept by virtue of being a international fintech institute, fully dedicated institute. And the way it makes a difference is that all the related components, building blocks of fintech are created there, right there at the campus. So you have research labs in AI, agentic AI or blockchain, the sandboxes, the data repositories, everything is right there. You don't have to seek other departments' help or university, other areas and all. Right in one institution, you have everything placed, and a lot of advantages ensue from such type of co-location. So this is what places IFI uniquely and can make real impact in terms of architecting this fintech talent pipeline. Next, please. This is another unique proposition which we have conceptualized. As you see, this is you must be familiar with this type of pyramids. The base of the pyramid, which is meant those about 75 crores of people, human lives, living a life of austerity and real difficult times in the villages. They all have mobile phones in their homes. They go to the agricultural land for cultivation, for cropping, for harvesting, and they face all the challenges inflicted by nature in terms of rains, heat, temperature, etc. And they have a mobile phone through which they want to be at par with the urban dwelling person. That is the challenge. So, bottom of the pyramid, you see, this is what is called the inclusion side of International FinTech Institute activities and programs and research problems. And many of you are, I know, brilliant in this space, and I would welcome you to connect with us if you have solutions in terms of making the lives more meaningful by plugging the digital side in the last mile, their mobile phones, etc. I mean, how can you make a simple 4-button keypad on their mobile phone? They push one button and money is transferred. They push other button, the insurance is done. These type of very simple activities, because their literacy levels are not so good. So therefore, these type of solutions, IFI has to take the responsibility for as an institution. That is where Institute of FinTech comes important, not just a course or a program in FinTech. Next, of course, is the talent pipeline side, starting from 12th standard, the commerce and the science side, the physics side. People, they want to know how this all things gel, the finance and tech part. And right up to the industry and regulator side. And other side, you see again that intersection of how the various mandates of SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals enunciated by the United Nations, and the various emerging technologies, whether be it the Googles or the other tech giants producing a lot of proliferation in this AI space and all, how all these things can be made meaningful by a product or a service. Next, please. Next. This is what is the model on which, based on the past couple of slides which you saw, we generate a lot of data for those programs to be designed. But then once the program is designed, how do you package it? The program has to be packaged in a meaningful way and very concise and effective manner so that it gets transferred to the learner. So we have this 5-axis model where I mentioned that for the user's context of wherever he is, whenever he wants, he can pick a lesson and learn, join our classes in hybrid mode. If he's locally available, he can join in class, otherwise online. Next, please. This is the flow, program design flow. I will not go into the details. Already I have mentioned how this whole program design takes place at IFI. But this, all it points to is that there is very thorough research going into program designs. They are not just a program designed for training programs. Next. These are the themes emerging out of this research, various themes addressing various dimensions of fintech space. Almost, I mean, new areas are also mentioned. One, longevity finance is emerging as a good area wherein, because you know the dependency ratio is increasing, the population is aging in many countries, and the old age people, they need very good fintech type of solutions wherein they're at their apartment, everything becomes available because of the constraints faced by them, old age. So these type of new concepts are coming up, the cross-border challenges, etc. The idea is that IFI is diving into each of these themes areas to design and develop their programs. Next. Next. I'll skip this. It just gives you an overview of what the IFI programs, how they are distributed in terms of duration and the content, whether it is new skilling or the governance, regulations, everything. Next, please. Again, the same, how we have been doing so far in the past just 8 to 9 months of our starting from 17 January. Next, please. Next, please. This is how IFI, if you are there at IFI in any of the programs, you will find that this is how a week goes by. There are quizzes, there are programs, there are workshops, roundtable discussions, classroom lectures, simulations and modeling through sandboxes, which is under development, not yet there, but this is whole flow throughout the year. So it has to be very vibrant in terms of activities and projects involving youngsters, interns who join us there for small micro projects, and of course taking them through the courses. Next. This is particularly I wanted to show you where IFI has intervened along with Seva. Seva, you know, in Gujarat, this is a self-employed women's association with 3 million members. IFI is joined, we have joined together to create a mission in which we will be taking fintech programs to each and every individual in this rural area. So already we have covered in the about 3 batches with around 53 villages and 18 districts of Gujarat. And the most beautiful part, if you see, and very motivating, the age mix, if you see, there are grandmothers in this batch and youngsters, teenagers in this batch. So you can imagine the motivation that old lady of 67, 68 years wants to know how she can have savings in a bank from the mobile device. This type of, the interest and motivation is seen in this fintech space, which IFI is now collaborating with other organizations and NGOs. Next, please. I visited the village. I thought, instead of classroom, let me go to the site and see. So if you see these women, each one is representing thousands and thousands of rupees and physically depositing to these women there who is making a receipt. This is what is fintech about. We have to solve this problem. So IFI is working with NGOs to work out this, plus tech companies. So I am in touch with some startups also. One startup is there with us here, and other startups in the GIFT City. And let me tell you, this fintech sector now, it is taking the shape of a sector, is hugely driven by startups, not by legacy big giants and all. It is hugely driven by startups, new ideas, very small teams, and very effective and efficient. So this type of solution, where that yellow receipt is replaced by a button on the mobile, that is what we are looking for. Otherwise, this lady has to carry lakhs of rupees from this village to a deposition center where some small bank counter is there where she can deposit, which again, besides the risk, it should not be there when urban area we are playing with these devices. Next, please. These are some of the batches which have already been attending IFI programs from business side, working professionals, the village rural side, and faculty development programs also we have done for universities in Gandhinagar, that's the Gujarat Technical Universities. Their batches are coming. Now we are also organizing some workshops on climate fintech side. Next, please. Just fast. I'll just skip all this. I mean, the last one was from Nandan Nilikani's initiative. Very brilliant idea, along with the central bank governor. You might have heard of this Finternet. He wants to create a Finternet in which all the stakeholders, just like the internet, they have at a soft level all these concepts of unified ledger, this use of DLT, etc., blockchain, to bring into the folds the last mile, which we discussed here. So we are working on that also. And of course, let me just skip this. These are research areas. I will skip this. Okay, now that is it. Thank you. And I welcome any questions. You can conclude the.
So we'll be taking the questions later towards the end after all the panel discussions.
I have crossed the time by 5 minutes.
That's okay, sir. That's okay. Can we have a big round of applause for Mr. Sandeep Dixit, please, for that wonderful presentation? And sir, requesting you to please take a seat. We are starting the panel discussion.
The next panel on this. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir, for that stellar presentation. Without wasting any time, I'm going to promptly invite all our speakers on stage. The topic is Emerging Tech in Finance. Please welcome with a big round of applause Professor Mithun Radhakrishna, IFI GIFT City and faculty at IIT Gandhinagar. Welcome, sir. A warm welcome to Professor Chelva Kumar, IFI GIFT City and IIT Gandhinagar. Big round of applause for him, please. Can we please welcome Professor Kinshuk Saurabh, IFI GIFT City and Ahmedabad University. Please welcome Mr. Sandeep Dixit, sir is already here. Professor Sameer Kulkarni, IFI GIFT City, IIT Gandhinagar. Big round of applause, please. And we are grateful to Professor Umesh Belur for joining last minute the panel. Please welcome Professor Umesh Belur, IFI GIFT City, University of California, San Diego. So with that, let's start our discussion on emerging tech in finance.
Good morning all. Without further ado, let's start the session. So this session explores emerging technologies in fintech, focusing on what's truly deployable now and what needs rethinking across architectures, data, AI stacks, and security and regulatory readiness. So I'll just kick off the session with a question to Kinshuk. Kinshuk, maybe let's first look at what are the challenges the area faces today. And then from there we can take it forward. Kinshuk.
Okay, so let me take you back a little while. So pre-2007, the banks were sitting very pretty if you look at the balance sheet. And, but still they had the problem. They had very high operational costs. The agility in terms of meeting customer expectations were not so good. There were issues related to financial inclusion, which were, all of these were all hidden. But suddenly, 2007 financial crisis happened, and in response to that, we see that Bitcoin emerged, blockchain became popular, and then smartphones became ubiquitous, into every hand. And this had a dramatic effect on the banking as we see today, because the banks felt a real threat. The first real threat they faced was in terms of disintermediation. Because you see, banks are basically a relationship-based business. And when you have apps, super apps, and those P2P lending businesses, making, direct payments, bypassing banks, what it does is affects the bank's relationship with the customer, and that undermines the very foundation of bank. So, that's one big challenge the banks have. There are other challenges, in terms of meeting the technology. So they have the legacy system. How do you migrate this legacy system, to the current, payment rails which we have in the fintech? Then, handling this cloud, moving towards the cloud nativity, handling cybersecurity. There are other similar issues, using proper use of AI, ML, integrating, taking full advantage of the opportunity offered by blockchain. So these are some of the major challenges which banks have. And one big challenge which is emerging is how do they then, prepare themselves for, for the quantum computing, which will come very soon rather than later.
So, and I just also maybe quickly, if you could touch upon what is the current state of art readiness in sort of addressing these challenges you mentioned?
That's a great question. Let me basically 3-4 things, as I mentioned before. If I take the example of the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, I would still say the banks have succeeded to some extent, but still the success is a little bit moderate, I would say, because they have been pretty good so far in terms of using risk scoring, risk modeling of using AI, ML. They've been, so to say, successful in using KYC and EML kind of a system integrating, but they are still to succeed in terms of migrating their data management to the cloud, so they are not fully using these cloud services. So, these are the challenges relating, and the other challenges, yes, of course, the Bitcoin. There are several global banks using blockchain. Several global banks have been very successful, like JP Morgan and HSBC and Citibank, even Bank Santander, in how do they use blockchain. They've been using it in supply chain finance, in using international trade finance. They are part of this R3 code, the framework. So they've been successful. By and large, if you look at, by and large, general old traditional commercial banks, they have fallen behind. They have not made full use of blockchain in their business. Of course, then there are other problems relating to, they yet to face the issues related to CBDCs, as and when they come in, then, take full advantage of, cloud nativity, and also quantum computing. So these are big challenges ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Kinshuk. Maybe I think next question I'll ask Professor Samir, who is a technologist here. And like, do you agree with Kinshuk's diagnosis, and where do you see the new technologies sort of trying to solve this, and how can we advance this? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mithun. Yeah, absolutely. I think there have been challenges that what Professor Kinshuk mentioned about, but let us just revisit on the concept. Like we started with talking about the banks and they are facing the challenges. But what's the whole point of bringing this fintech? That's democratizing and ensuring the inclusion of finance, right? So if we see from that point, now whatever way we are trying to, the way that a person interacts has changed. And that's where technology has enabled the ease of access, right? And technology has enabled the financial inclusion. Just if you look at the statistics, right around 2010, there was less than 2% of the people who had bank accounts. But after this Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana and all of it, it shows that nearly now 85% of the population has access to the banks. And that is showing the positivity of how this has come. And that's because of essentially the India stack, overall that came to enable this fintech that's operating. And nowadays, we also hear that its UPI is not just the Indian, it's a brainchild that started in India, but it's also global now, where different countries are almost, if I see at this date, around 9 countries have adopted it, including the ones that are developed, not just that we are still tagged developing. But I would say that India has far leapfrogged many countries in becoming one of the major fintech adopters. That's because of technology again, right? So to summarize, technology has helped a lot, but it's a two-edged sword. Like fintech technologies also face the challenges. And the way we solve them is again through technology itself. So there is a lot to do in the domain of cybersecurity. There is a lot to do in the domain of RegTech, which is again becoming a lot of key point to keep up with how we progress. So yeah, I definitely agree. And we see there is also a potential and opportunity in this space.
Thank you, Samir. Just to follow up, maybe I'll ask Umesh, can you sort of name a couple of emerging technologies that are going to transform the financial services in maybe the short term?
Yeah, I think picking up on the theme of inclusivity and democratization, I think that's what I'd like to stick to. I see sort of 3 initiatives that we could focus on going forward. The first of these is really access to a scalable, multilingual financial NLP. So we've talked about LLMs. It's everybody talks about an LLM today, but we really don't have something that can address the top 20 Indian languages in terms of NLP today, right? I mean, that's what we really need to see. So LLMs that are multilingual, that can address at scale, will do a lot for inclusivity in terms of democratization, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is data is scattered across very different domains for us, right? So we have banks and data sitting in banks. Then there are credit transaction data that is sitting with other companies, credit card companies and so on. Then there are wallets today. There are these Paytm, Phone Pay, all of them have wallets. So something that can enable adaptive federated learning across these kinds of data ecosystems is, I think, something we can focus on as well. These are all, again, things that we can do immediately rather than emerging technologies. These are specifics that we can jump upon immediately is what I feel. And the last thing is really explainable, because it's a financial industry, there is a certain accountability that we must have that may not be as rigorously needed in other domains. As a result of which, I think something that is real-time explainable AI, which can satisfy regulatory concerns, as well as be able to provide answers very, very quickly. Low latency, explainable AI, I think those are 3 things that I can think of at the top of my head that would be super important right now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Umesh. I think that's a very good segue. What I wanted to ask next, specifically with the RegTech and automation. So, Chelva, can you sort of talk about the anti-money laundering and KYC, the compliances? Where do you see, what are the challenges now? How can we sort of increase the industry and regulator engagement models? What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you. That's a deep question. So I'm going to give a 30,000-foot answer in respect of time and really encourage you to discuss offline once we finish this. So emerging technologies, the speed at which it's evolving is mind-boggling. We even talk about explosion. It's if you look at it, it's a logarithmic growth. So the growth is very, very fast. And one example I want to give here is that in order to keep track of fintech itself, there is a need for a fintech readiness index. And I'm glad to tell you that there are young people here from IIT Gandhinagar in this auditorium who are working on developing an fintech and actually proving the conceptual validity of that. Coming to the points that you made, so one, we always talk about AML, anti-money laundering. So what do we need in terms of doing that? So hand in hand, we have KYC, know your customer. These are very serious issues that the more you know your customer, the better you can protect anti-money laundering. You can protect money laundering and ensure anti-money laundering. And what is being done now is a very deliberate building of an infrastructure, a solid digital foundation, which is allowing banks and individuals and institutions to have a system that can protect anti-money laundering. And anti-money laundering is the tip of the iceberg. It goes all the way up to terrorism, much more complicated, corporate fraud, much more serious things. The second issue you mentioned is, Mithun, that RegTech, what's the big revolution in RegTech? So RegTech used to be innovation versus regulation. We used to be in the past fighting innovation. If we look at the Banking Secrecy Act of 1970, it was wrought with a lot of resistance from the banks. Legislators were fighting it. But today, it is extremely different. India, in fact, has taken a lead where there is consultative regulations. Regulators are consulting with the industry, with the players, and making sure that this is in an environment where innovation and regulation are hand in hand. And that is a huge difference that took place. So I think I would like to highlight those two. And given that we are running out of time, I encourage anyone who has more questions to approach after the talk.
Yeah. Thank you, Chelva. So Sandeep, maybe from the IFI vantage point, how can we sort of catalyze this adoption of emerging tech across institutions? And what should we sort of pilot first to demonstrate this?
Thank you, Mithun, for asking this. See, IFI, as was mentioned in the slides also, I tried to cover some of the areas through which IFI can really contribute to this, meeting the challenge in emerging tech and making the talent pipeline ready. One is that. How it will do it? That is through very active collaboration and co-development with the industry. See, the emerging tech word, if you see, as our panelists have pointed out, currently we are in the classical computing domain largely, okay, and we are going to venture into quantum side in a decade or maybe 1.5 decade or so. So this migration, IFI is keeping close track of what is happening to the TRL levels, the technology readiness levels in the laboratories, in the various universities in US and Europe, particularly Europe, because quantum is advancing at a very high pace there. And so one way IFI will be able to capture these developments from the laboratories, try to partner with those leading organizations and universities, create similar setups here in IFI in the research labs, create some sandboxes, mock developments, simulating scenarios, stress testing these products, etc., from in the co-developed with the industry, and always and that as a byproduct, it provides a good platform for the participants to have sort of gaming in the learning process. They put their hands onto these sandboxes, and the challenge is given to them. They fight it out, and in the process innovate and develop some solutions. So get ready for this emerging technology. So what I would say is that IFI, by virtue of its collaborative and networked way of working, will be able to definitely address this challenge and prepare the team in Gujarat and Pan-India particularly on meeting these challenges emerging out of this.
Thank you, Sandeep. I think one sort of, especially when we are looking at adopting fintech, especially for a country like India, if there is no financial inclusion, then of course, if it just serves the top 1%, top 2%, then I don't think it's definitely not useful for a country like India. So given that inclusion is so important, especially for a country like India, I just want to hear, just to wrap up, what are your thoughts on all the panelists? Just to, maybe we can start with Sandeep, and what's the challenge and where are we sort of going? And just if you could just...
Thank you. And this is really a very important thing. And what Umesh just now mentioned regarding the LLMs, the models and the multilingual aspects of connecting to the people, that interface is definitely a extremely critical link in this whole process of bringing on board the base of that pyramid into this digital world. So that is one very critical part which already has mentioned. This solutions are emerging through LLMs and various types of other AI techniques and all. So I think through these type of associations and collaborations, through IFI, we will be able to steer and make some contribution in this area.
So if there is somebody else want to add, we have running short of time, but maybe
A very
30
quick
seconds.
comment. I think inclusivity will also demand a certain level of trust from the system because it's about finance, right? I mean, it's about your money at the end of the day. And I think it's all going to be about how we can inspire trust in systems that we build. Eventually, that's when it'll get adopted at scale. Otherwise, we're going to not really see adoption.
Okay, so
Just
yes, Chelva.
one quick thing.
10 seconds you have.
In terms of inclusivity, today we have more than one cell phone per person in India, and smartphones, 65% are smartphones. So you don't need a computer, you just need this. So I just want to.
So
Thank you.
Just
Yes,
one
Samir,
comment.
please.
I think like, you got the right message here, but I would also want to emphasize that for the trust, it is also the awareness in the background that is essential. And that's where I think IFI can play a major role in bringing this fintech together with the awareness for the people about the finance, what's going on in the tech, and then bring all of this together.
Yeah, that's the programs which are initiated. In
Yes,
connecting
exactly.
people, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you. So in the interest of time, if there are some questions, we will be able to take
So
from
we'll be taking
audience.
the questions towards the end.
Okay, so then maybe we'll wrap up this session and thank you. And we'll be starting as panel 2 on climate finance and green finance.
Absolutely. So a big round of applause, please, for this panel. What a discussion we've had. Thank you so much, Professor Umesh, for sharing your inputs. We'll take a group photograph, please. Once again, we are thankful and grateful to each of our panel members for joining us and for sharing their very, very valuable inputs. Thank you so much, and thank you, Professor Umesh. We request the panelists to kindly remain on stage, please. Requesting the panelists to kindly remain on stage. It's just, we're requesting Mr. Mahesh to join us. So can we have a warm welcome and big round of applause, please, for Mr. Mahesh Kokalaki. All right, so with that, I hand over to our moderator, sir. You can take forward the next discussion.
Thank you. So this session, we want to examine climate fintech, green finance, and net zero transition, clarifying actually what actually is climate fintech and what are the challenges that is existing in terms of green finance. So we have Mahesh, who is the CEO of Climate Capital Market based out of GIFT City. Welcome, Mahesh, to the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Mithun.
So Sandeep, maybe I'll just start with what exactly is climate fintech and how IFI is contributing to this or planning to contribute.
Okay. See, fintech, as we have seen in the first presentation, what defines a fintech, and the climate fintech was at that intersection of those 3 points: tech, finance, and the climate. So whatever technology is existing or can be developed to address this fast pace of growth without emissions or reduced emissions, that is counted as enabling. That is the fintech part. Now, just let me elaborate on this. I have spent more than almost 1.5 decades in the energy sector, in the NTPC, Badarpur and all. What is happening is that all these thermal power plants, as you know, emit SOx, NOx, and carbon dioxide and all. So every 1 unit generated produces an 800, 900 grams of CO2. Now, this is at the stage when the thermal power plants are using supercritical technologies. That is the latest in the state of the art. Now there is a mandate from the government that co-fire these technologies with some biomass, so that some cycling takes place, or another aspect from the downstream side, capture the CO2, convert into a product which locks the carbon for maybe 100 years or 50 years or so it doesn't go into the atmosphere. The key point here is what are those technologies? The technologies to do this are still at lab scale or pilot scale, demonstration scale. They need a lot of funding. Now, bankers would be, definitely having their eye on the risk, would be very, very restrictive in terms of funding those technologies in this, promoting this greenness of the thermal power plants, unless they have proven their potential. So this is one area where fintech can intervene to see if green financing new channels can be created. Can they tap in new sources, new channels, or vice versa? Can they prove the risk is not there, or less risk is there, or risk as significant as the existing technologies? Then banks would have no objection in investing in those. So one side, the risk mitigation part, how do they do that? Do that with the as just now we discussed in the first panel, a lot of data is getting generated because of IoT and sensorization and all. So a lot of this data is there. Use the data, build models, simulate, test, and prove to the investors the bankability of the projects. This fintech segment will be extremely important. We call it the digital twin. So can digital twin be leveraged by the financing or investors agencies to gain confidence and put in money? So that's one way is there.
Thank you, Sandeep. I think now, just as a follow-up, I want to know what exactly is, so I know your company is Climate Capital Markets, but what exactly is Climate Capital Markets? And also, just as to follow up, Sandeep did mention the challenges which green developers face. If you could also elaborate currently, what are the challenges and how can we look at that? Yeah.
So, Professor Mithun, thanks. To address what is climate capital market, I would like to tell what is India's the most important climate challenge. See, we are the most developed country. We are the fourth most developed country, but it's also true that we are the seventh most vulnerable country when it comes to climate risk. That's because 46% of our populations depends on agriculture, 11,000 kilometers of coastal line, most populous country. And the major risk, the enhanced risk is that only 1% of our assets, that is 55 billion only of our assets, are aligned with GSS plus global taxonomies like CBI and ICMA. So what does that mean? This means the greater risks of greenwashing for the global investors and lesser access to that capital. So at Climate Capital Market, we are building a platform. We are on a mission to align these India's climate assets to that of global standards like green, social and sustainability. And so that the greenwashing risk is reduced and it can attract more capital into India. So to address how we are solving that, the traditional capital, like the USD capital, the different currency capital should be blended with the domestic capital and along with the philanthropic capital also to ensure that the profitability or the innovation in the climate space is maintained. To address the second half, the challenges the green developers are facing. See, there are quite obvious challenges like delays and counterparty risks. But if you keep these two constants, I think, like according to our study, that the high cost of capital, which can be brought down by bringing in the pool of investors from across the world. Second is the awareness, improving the awareness of these kind of instruments so that these green developers are aligned with those instruments. And the third one is ensuring that right from the outset of this project, these are in alignment with or in touch with the global investors, what they exactly want. So, I mean, to conclude, I would like to bring in what Renew did, Renew Power. So it's every green developer can take leaf out of their book because they have in total were successful in raising $11 billion for their green projects.
Okay, thank you. That's great. So I just, given that I wanted to ask this later, but since you mentioned, so what role actually the regulators can play in some of the mitigating the challenges which developers, etc. face? So what role, like maybe SEBI or RBI, what role they can play in actually making sure that this is seamless?
In interest of time, IFSCA is a unified regulator with RBI and SEBI. And what IFSCA did, I would like to mention that. IFSCA, they ensured that the clear taxonomies, what not to do, anti-greenwashing principles they came across. They incentivized the startups with the sandboxes and grants to experiment, there is a worldwide, this is the only jurisdiction where there is a minimum withholding tax of 9%. If you go abroad, there's minimum taxation of 50, it starts from 15%. And even the banks there have to maintain 5% of their assets as a policy at any given point of time should be green. So they will be always in search of these kind of projects. So to summarize, the clear policy making, monitoring, incentivizing, and penalizing if you are not following that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mahesh. So, Samir, maybe Mahesh is looking address some of the regulation-wise, some of the bodies, what they can do. But how can technology help in terms of easing the finance norms for, how can we bring in technology there?
Yeah, thanks, Mithun. This is a very precise, nice question to begin with, to say that we had the ground up about the aspects that are relating to climate fintech now. And earlier in the presentation by Sandeep, we also saw how these things are aligning with finance and technology and now the climate. Now, if I speak specifically about the role that the tech is playing in here, like we spoke about the carbon footprint. So how are we able to do carbon accounting? That becomes the first clear-cut question, like whether people are able to give that reliable data out, and what are the means to do this carbon accounting in respect whether it is about supply chain, whether it is about billing, invoicing, any of these activities. And these can all be done now using the technology, like applying the blockchain to store all the data where you are able to analyze them, get the things out in a clear and explainable way. And that's where the trust using the blockchain, the integrity of the data that is going to be there is going to be used for carbon accounting, which can make it more reliable. Second, like also what Mahesh pointed, India is a land of agriculture, right? And in fact, here it is important that we see how we can enable tech to do the agriculture in a more better way. And that's where, if you see, lots of companies have emerged, especially in fintech, towards agri-tech, what we call as the term agri-tech. And in fact, SBI was the first one in 2021 to point out that as a country, we need this sector of agri-tech to bring, and it initiated an RFP. And now, because of that, we have seen a lot of precision agriculture aspects develop that are able to help do the agriculture in a better way. You can study the soil characteristics, you can do the planning of which crops to use and all of these. And that's where you can see that the tech has been always being a key role associating, whether it is with fintech directly or it is even if it's climate, like I said about carbon tracing, giving the carbon credits, mapping the carbon credits across different companies. All of these have played a major role. And we see there is a lot also going forward for a tech to play in this climate thing and meet the SDG goals.
Thank you, Samir. Just to follow up, I think Kinshuk, just how do you assess the potential of VCM, like voluntary carbon markets and cap and trade for CR trading? And can you also sort of talk about some technology?
There is very little time, but I tell you, both these mechanisms are, designed to reduce, carbon emission. And VCM is a voluntary mechanism. So somebody who is a polluter, and somebody who is more efficient in reducing carbon pollution. So a polluter is paying to somebody who's polluting less. And a voluntary mechanism is both parties, do and buy and sell of carbon credits on a voluntary-based system. And it's CNT is a cap and trade system. There's a compliance. There are standards which a polluter has to meet, and is heavily regulated, and larger parties are involved. With voluntary, there is a great opportunity. It's very exciting because you have, you can actually draw in SMEs, the smaller parties also into the game. So how do you make basically, the problem is, as Manish is trying to solve, is how do you make these two parties identify themselves? A polluter, how does the polluter know that, somebody who's polluting less? How somebody who's polluting less, once, comes to know about who's polluting more? And then the question of, there platforms are trying to bring together both parties and solve this problem of matchmaking. But the biggest problem would remain, and across both these things, is the problem of greenwashing. So greenwashing is basically, an organization or somebody, an entity which is claiming that it is reducing carbon emission, but is actually making a false claim out of that. And it's trying to, come out as a good guy, where it's not actually. And there lies a challenge, because it is an issue across both voluntary and the capital trade system, that how do you identify that somebody who is actually reduced carbon?
Okay. Thank you, Kinshuk. Just to wrap up, maybe each of you, maybe in 20 seconds, you can weigh in. What is the future of climate fintech? So maybe you can talk from the regulation aspect, you can talk from the tech aspect. Where do you see the future of climate fintech? Just maybe we have running short of time.
The agentic AI will going to play a very important role in surveillance of these many schemes and ensuring the right value is right value. We draw maximum value out of the data points and ensuring that these workflows are constantly monitored and brought and fed it into the main systems to analyze.
Okay. Samir, Sandeep, Kinshuk, you want to add anything?
And actually, you can use a lot of use of IoT to track whether how much the carbon pollution has been reduced by a particular entity, and you can actually use a lot of use artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms to actually run some simulation and come to a verification process, strengthen the verification process. And obviously blockchain also, because I think the kind of platform which Mahesh is talking about, you have the opportunity to tokenize those carbon assets, and which will make it easier, and that can be recorded and can be immutable and can be, like securities, can be bought and sold over the exchange.
Okay. Thank you, Kinshuk. I think there's a lot to actually discuss, but in interest of time, and we can ask if there are some questions from the audience.
Well, thank you so much for that very great discussion. Do we have questions, please? Kindly raise your hand. Okay.
Yeah. My question is to Professor Kinshuk first. Sir, you mentioned about climate credit. So the pricing aspect is majorly what I see from here. It's majorly managed by specifically American counterpart. I mean, like crude or any other material. If we produce anything, we should be in a position to price it and accordingly. So here, what I see the problem is specifically couple of this volunteer mechanism based in America. They control the pricing. That is one aspect of it. Second aspect, Samir sir, which you mentioned. See, carbon credit. Companies are responsible, countries are responsible, but here I see, for example, there are Ukraine and Russia war going on. So what is the carbon emission going on there? So there is no global authority or any organization which is pinpointing that this is the carbon emission that you guys are doing. Here we are trying to accumulate drop by drop by sharing the carbon credits and exchanging all these climate related concerns, and at the other end, and nobody is penalizing that. Like there are 10 years of wars are going on, and we are doing something other way around there. So there should be some penalizing mechanisms of whoever is going into war. So one for Kinshuk sir, for you, and yeah.
So the question about pricing, I think I've asked the most difficult question to answer. Obviously, the pricing is the most difficult part, because there are elements of greenwashing. When you cannot itself decide how much of pollution has been cut, there is a problem. And there are standards and international agencies which are working together to make the verification process, more transparent and more effective. So it's all function of that. Then there are secondary issues related to demand and supply in the market. And demand and supply, and plus there are also liquidity issues and lack of funding of carbon projects. So all of these issues, coming together affect the pricing. And I think the market, the carbon exchange market and the pricing mechanism of CER we are in an inefficient market, and it will take some time, for us to manage to managed to make it more efficient and transparent.
So quickly to summarize, I mean, it's a great question, but I would say, like, let's not get into the geopolitics part, which is where some other people or entities which are there to manage are up to them. But if we don't see that a drop by drop adds to the ocean, if we go by that, it is individual's responsibility anyway, right? Regardless of how it eventually pans out in the global space. And that's where, if you see, just last week there was a report which said India and China are leading in the production of clean energy, right? In the entire world, it is India and China which are leading, while the so-called developed countries, including the US, EU, have been much more behind in what they set out as the SDG goals, right? So that means they have different geopolitical issues that can be outside of the scope. But what we can take is everyone's responsibility to act towards making a climate fintech a positive one. That's all I would say. Thank you.
So, coming to the academia, what we foresee, if India is a nation 2047, we are going to lead anything here. So it's academia who is going to bear the torch for this. So what I mean here, looking up to you guys, is it is not the trend rule. We should come up with that. For example, there are so many weapons across. If you fire this, you will be, I mean, we can have calculators. We can calculate and have penalizing there. So it's terms of monetary impact. We can have some mechanism, and nobody is stopping us to create out of the box solution and put it across. If we want to be a leader, we can put it that this is what we have, and there should be some research, white papers, understanding, mutual consensus, which would probably initiate from the academia.
Yeah, point definitely well taken.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. This is with reference to the previous session. Namaskar everyone. My name is Ajay, and I belong to the listed RegTech company, homegrown Indian company, and you would be happy to know we're working with almost all the regulators in the country as well as overseas. So we're working with all the Middle Eastern regulators. So my question is with Mr. Dixit. Mr. Dixit, you mentioned two very important areas. One is the RegTech, and second is the students which you're producing on the skilling of different programs what you're doing. So the question number one is, while you mentioned on RegTech, do you already have some initiatives taken on RegTech? And follow up to that is, how can we industry experts could be a partner with you in that? This is one. Second is, whatever the alumni you produce, so is there a work scope of those alumni, once they come out of these skilling programs, they get into industry, or what do you do with them? Thank you, sir.
Okay. Regarding the first part, see, regarding RegTech, we are in the process of tying up with the IFSCA and the other regulatory bodies for building a sandbox for stress testing of products. It is not yet implemented, but already the deliberations are going on, and the first report we have prepared. So very soon we expect that sandbox will be in place, which will act as a, you can say, testing platform or gaming type of platform for various participants and our students to innovate and see whether compliances are there. This is what was the first question? Yes, that is very important, because industry, this whole exercise we are doing with the fintech product companies in the GIFT City area. So their role is definitely of very critical and very relevant also, because they will be the one who will be coming with those product designs and various concepts and rules on which this has to be built. And then we will be engaging with the set of rules given by the regulator to test them out. So industry, partnering with the industry is going to be definitely the key part, wherein in case you are already present in this, you are welcome to reach out and discuss with us. Regarding the second part was, you asked about... Yeah, so already we have been approached by industry for placement. So the two batches who have passed out on fintech foundations, we have got very good response from the industry for absorption in for their various job roles. Another thing we are trying out is we are reaching out to various corporates for, see, every corporate has got a induction program, okay, like even banks, big banks, SBI and all. I have approached SBI also and other banks. I am requesting them to reroute their batches through IFI to go through this fintech program and then go back. So instead of spending 10 months in their regular programs, maybe a couple of weeks they can spend in IFI. So go through this fintech complete rigor of the courses which have been designed, well thought out, and then go back to this. So this becomes a part of their probationary training or in induction training programs. Besides, of course, the lateral entry side also we are trying. So in this, I'm hoping to get some very good success in the coming months, wherein a module will be inserted in various training programs of corporate sites. Thank you.
Well, we'll have to close this session now. Thank you so much to our panelists. Let's have a resounding round of applause, please. We request them for a group photograph. Kindly step forward, gentlemen, for a group photograph to commemorate this session. Thank you so much, Professor Mithun, for wonderfully moderating the discussion. And thank you to all of our panelists. It's truly, truly been an honor to have you here at Global Fest 2025.